Have you ever dreamt of receiving the Nobel Prize? Ever? No? I did. When I was a child, I thought that getting the Nobel Prize is the best thing that can happen to you. So I was 8 years old and I was good at mathematics, and I was trying to find some new axioms and theorems in order to deserve a Nobel Prize. But one day, my parents, when they saw that I was writing all those theorems and axioms, 8 years old, they told me the hard truth. There is no Nobel Prize in mathematics. You have it in literature, medicine, chemistry, physics, and peace, but no Nobel Prize in mathematics. I got so disappointed. But life went on. I forgot my old dream and continued with mathematics. First it was mathematics, later on it was computer science and software development. I'm really very passionate about software development, especially Agile software development. I have been working as a software architect in many years, developing financial systems. It's electronic trading systems. And one of my special areas that I'm interested in is Agile architecture. And lately I became a development manager, formal development manager, but in fact I was informal Agile leader for some longer period of time. And then I realized it's not enough only to improve financial transactions and doing some coding. You should focus on something that is called emotional intelligence. IQ is not enough. And as it's defined, what defines a personality is both IQ and emotional intelligence. So I was a tech girl, but I wanted to learn more about leaderships and coaching trends that are here. And I found a very good article. I can really recommend, if you haven't read that, The Agile Leader, published by Michael Spade. It's an Agile Coaching Institute. I really liked it. Now I'm going to refer just to some parts of that article, but if you are interested in Agile leadership, I recommend reading it. And one thing for me that is tech girl that I liked how they defined how we should develop ourselves as leaders. They did a very nice metaphor. They say we all have like our psychology. It's like we are working on some operational systems. So in order to improve ourselves, we have to upgrade our internal operating systems as leaders. And we have to scale first ourselves up, and later on we can scale other things. So I really liked that definition, how it's like we are working like operating systems that we have built in our brains. And I was reading much more books about how our brain works. And probably you heard about this book, probably you read it, Thinking Fast and Slow, written by Daniel Kahneman. Everybody is referring to that book, regardless if it is software development or some other areas, everyone is referring to that book. It's that our brain has two different systems, System 1 and System 2. One is for those fast decisions. The System 2 is responsible for that more complicated, complex thinking. And I really like this book. But I've noticed another thing regarding this book. It's written by Daniel Kahneman, and he got a Nobel Prize in economic sciences. And he's not economist. He's in fact psychologist. So I was thinking, oh, look at him, smart guy. There is no Nobel Prize for psychology, so he wrote a very nice book about psychology and applied it in business and received a Nobel Prize in economics. And I got an idea. What can I do? I remember that my old dream about Nobel Prize. So what I'm good at improving financial transactions, because I have been developing financial transactions for many, many years. On the other side, what is my goal now? To improve communication between people in order to become a better leader. And what is in fact communication? What is beneath the communication? It's in fact transactions between people. So maybe I should apply my knowledge of improving financial transactions and try to improve transactions between people. And then I remember another theory that I read when I was 19 years old, and I really like it. And the name is transactional analysis. It is proposed by a psychologist that is called Eric Berne. It was written already in 1964, so it's nothing new, it's an old theory, but I really like it. Why? It's a theory of behavior. How he defines a transaction? A transaction is an exchange of communication, verbal or not verbal, between two people. It's based on theoretical framework and describes recurring, repeatable transaction between people. Eric Berne realized that when we are communicating with each others, usually it's recurring, we are repeating the same recurring series of transactions in a predictable way. And transactional analysis is in fact a tool to understand ourselves better and enrich our own personality. So it was theory. Now we are going to see some examples that you understand why I like the theory and how it can help us with leading and coaching. Have you noticed some situation when you are talking to someone, all of a sudden you cannot say no to him or to her. Something happens, you can say no to some people, but to some people you cannot say no. Or when you're talking to some people, all the time you feel like you have to defend yourself, your opinions, like you don't feel comfortable. So you can, it's nothing new, probably all of you know, that we have that repeatable conversational patterns. And it's nothing bad with that. But it's bad when it ends up in that endless negative loops that all people who are involved in conversation feel bad on the end. And Eric Berne described the model, how he believes that we work and why it's like that. So he defined 3 ego states. For him, he was inspired by Freud. So he said ego state, it's individual state of mind at any given point of time. And he said that all of us in ourselves, we have 3 parts. One is parent ego state. It's part of us which behaves as our parents are. Like, oh, you have taken this, don't forget this. You know, all those things as a parent do, it's our parent part of us. Then we have the adult ego state. It's when we are exchanging, for example, now I'm speaking from my adult ego state. I'm telling you some facts, some new things, some theories. And also we have that child part of ego state. It's all behaviors like we are still children. So parent ego state wants to be superior and decide. Adult part wants to be competent. And the child part wants to be liked. It's that part of us which is very happy when you get a like on Facebook or LinkedIn, then you feel, oh, so happy he put the like on my post. It's that part of us that are happy. So you understand, we have each of us have 3 different ego states. And what is very interesting, we shift between the states all the time. So maybe now I'm talking from then adult ego state, I'm telling you some facts, but I've changed to that child state because I want that you like my presentation, you know, so we are shifting. No, it's normal, all of us are doing that all the time. Shifting between states all the time. Here is more detailed model, it's called the PAC model, Parent Adult Child Model. Parent state has 2 parts. One is controlling parent, when you say, oh, don't do that, or so on. And nurturing part of a parent. On one side, the controlling part has both positive and negative sides. Positive sides is organizing, firm, comforting. Bad sides, that can be autocratic and dismissive. Nurturing part of a parent ego states is that positive sides that can be supportive and caring, negative side that is overprotective, for example. Adults cannot be divided, and the child ego state also has 2 different sides. One is adaptive child, that is learned how to behave in order that people like you. But it's like learning, it's not your free child reaction. And it also has 2 sides. Positive side is that is accommodating, assertive, and cooperative, and the negative side that can be rebellious or fearful. And also we have that free child in us that can be creative, curious, playful, and so on. Now, coming back to transactions. So you understand that model that Eric proposed, that we have those three parts of us: parent, adult, and children. For each transaction, when we communicate with each other, I'm telling you something, and then you answer that question, hopefully. So I'm sending some stimulus, and I get some response. Stimulus can be sent from any state. It can be sent from parent state, or adult, or child. And the response can be answered in any direction. For example, I ask you, what's the time? And you say, okay, now it's 1 o'clock. It's stimulus from adult part to adult part, and I got that answer in the same direction. And here are some examples. I ask you, how are you? You say, okay, fine, I'm doing fine, and so on. And it doesn't have to be from the same state. For example, some worried parent asks you, oh, haven't taken your warm sweater to that trip? And the child is saying, yes, mommy, don't worry, I'm taking that. So it's sent, but the important thing is it's sent from one ego state to another, and then you get the parallel answer. And those type of transactions are called parallel. Here are more examples, or complementary transactions. So, for example, two mothers are discussing, oh, our kids are so lazy nowadays, and the another mother is answering, yes, they're all just drinking or taking drugs and so on. So it's a parent-parent communication. How are you? I'm fine. Or some controlling boss is calling you and saying, oh, where is my report? And then you are like a child, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the time to finish it, and so on. So you recognize all those everyday situations. And for those parallel transactions, they can continue forever. But there are some other types of transactions that are called cross-transaction. You send stimulus from one ego state to another ego state, but you get response completely in a different way. For example, you ask me friendly, what's the time? I say, I don't want to tell you. And all of a sudden you are like shocked, why I'm not so friendly to you? Because it's that cross-transaction. And here are more examples. For example, hungry husband is coming home and saying, oh, what's the dinner? And then the wife is so tired and say, oh, stop bothering me. So he asked from that adult part, just he was interested, curious to know when the dinner will be ready, but she sent transaction from parent to child, like controlling and that negative part. And also someone is like, oh, let's have some fun. Oh, can't you be serious? I have lots of things to do. And so on. So there are cross-transactions. And there are the third type of transactions that are called ulterior. They're most complicated. You send one question, but underneath, you are in fact sending a hidden message at the same time. And they're complex transactions. For example, you finish some report, but you know that it's not very good. But you ask your boss or your colleague, how did you like my report? So this transaction is from adult part to adult part. And she's answering, it was okay. But the hidden transaction, you send it, oh, confirm that it wasn't good. And she is sending back, yes, I didn't like it. So it can be very complicated. Here are some more examples of that double transactions. For example, salespeople, sometimes when you go and they try to sell to you something, and they're using that psychological moment, they say, oh, you cannot buy that watch, it's too expensive for you. And then you feel like, now I have to buy it, I'm going to show that it's not so expensive. So it's the way how all transactions that are happening behind us. So, and ulterior transactions, two messages are sent at the same time. One is social level message, and the other is psychological message. And if you like mathematics, as I like, and combinatorics, you see that you have a lot of combinations of transactions that are happening between us all the time. And I really like that model because it explains to me how I behave. I recognize some situation, but other people, how do they behave at a certain level. And an analysis of these transactions provides a way of understanding our communications and our relationship with others. How? It's like analyzing event log. I hope that there are some of you who are developing sometimes, or you're still developers. For me, who are developing financial transactions, for example, you have some order and you want to send it to stock exchange. So you said request to place the order on the exchange, and if everything is normal, then you get some reply. So it's like screenshots from the event log. You send enter order, and you get for that the same sequence number, reply, everything is okay. But sometimes you send an order, there is no reply. It's also like in the communication. You ask someone something, no reply. Then you feel strange and uncomfortable. And sometimes it's even worse. The complete event log is red. You got the answer on a completely another transaction, and then the whole communication is broken. Then you feel bad, oh, what happened? I just asked this or this, and then the whole, you feel the event log is completely red. What do you do in such situation when you get a red event log? How do you analyze it? Usually, you go to see which transactions have happened before in order to see, okay, if this sequence of transactions happens, then it can result in a red event log. It's the same thing with communication. So Eric Berne realized, and he called it for games, that sometimes there are predefined set of transactions that are people exchanging between each other, and eventually it results in a red event log, in a catastrophe in communication. So he said a game is an ongoing series of recurring set of transactions progressive to a well-defined, predictable outcome. I have to point out here that all transactions are not bad. All communication that we are doing with other people, not bad. But sometimes we can see those patterns that can result in negative results. And we want to capture those gains and try to avoid them. In order that you can understand that theoretical description of what a game is, let's go to see one example. It's my favorite game, not that I'm playing it, but you can notice that everywhere, at work, at home, and so on. You have two persons, and here is also written, each person has that parent, adult, child part. For example, you have a problem, or someone else has a problem, and asks you for a solution. Oh, can you help me with this? It's a normal question that you are experiencing that at work all the time. And then another person say, yes, I could apply that solution, but I cannot because of that or that. Then you say, oh, hey, but maybe you can do that. He said, yes, but I cannot do that, blah, blah, blah. And then you are offering thousands of solutions, but then another person all the time say, yes, but I cannot apply it because of the different reasons. So the whole game starts, that person who asks for help, he's like a victim, he needs a help, and another person who wants to help him, he is much more like superior, he is offering some solutions. But usually, when you are trying to help someone in that way, it ends up that you are completely exhausted and tired of all suggestions that you gave to him, and he didn't accept anything. So it happens on switch during that series of transactions, isn't it? You started like superior position, you want to help someone, and then at the end you cannot help at all because he rejected all your solutions. What is happening on that transactional level? Everything starts like adult communication. Can you help me? Can you do that? No, I cannot apply that solution. Can you do this solution? No, I cannot do that, and so on. But hidden messages are all the time sending, he is playing like parent, he wants to help someone, and he is a child who is rejecting all suggestions. And at a certain point of time, that person who asks for help breaks that parallel transactions and change the ego state. All of a sudden, he is in parent state and say, okay, thank you, you are really of a good help, you didn't help me, and turn and go away. And then you feel, what did I do in the wrong way? Do you recognize that pattern that sometimes it happens, that people ask you for help, but in fact they're not accepting any of your solution, and at the end you feel completely bad because you put a lot of energy and effort to help him, and then he didn't accept. It's a typical description of what happens in one game. You have a first exchanging those parallel transactions, and then it happens something that is called switch, that someone all of a sudden changes the position from which he's sending the stimulus. In our case, it was all of a sudden he changed from adult to parent side, and then it's cross-out. All players are blocked. What happened now? They are so shocked. What happened? And then it's payoff time. So here is the formula for playing games. It starts with two persons. One is like inviting you, in fact, to play that game. When asked, how can you help me? And the other person who wants to continue, he accepts that game by, in this example, offering solutions. So they're exchanging responses. At what certain point of time it happens and switch, that the first person changed the way of transactions, send one cross transaction, then it's cross up and payoff. And payoff is in fact the final result when both people or several people experience negative emotion. There are a lot of games. Here was just one example. There are a lot of games that we are playing all the time. So maybe you can think your communication at home, at work, with your friends. And what I like in transactional analysis, all the names of those plays, games that are people playing, they are easily understandable, like that, why not, yes, but. Then you know exactly what the game is. For example, there is one game, I'm only trying to help you. All the time, you are like playing that, now I have to be careful not to say, but maybe also being a coach or something, you provide some help, but in fact you don't want to give help. You just want to play that game and collect your points on the end because you played that game. And also, probably you notice that there are persons that all the time are saying, oh, why does everything happening to me? Why I have to do all that type of work? It's also one game that people are playing. There is a great book. Eric Berne wrote a lot of things about transactional analysis, but I really like these games people play. So it's a description. Now I presented just one game to explain you what games are and how we are playing games when we are talking to each other. But if you're interested in reading it, you can buy like for 10 euros on Amazon. So it's, I think it's really very nice and interesting to read. Why do people play games? Why are we doing those exchange of transactions that will result in very arrogant, maybe big boss or those kinds of person that think that just he is okay and other people's are not okay? And also the worst situation that you think everything is so depressive, I'm not okay, all other people's are not okay. But it's just explanations. Why do we have a need to play games? We need to get some confirmation for our life positions, to show to us, yes, now I show to myself that, for example, I'm okay, but you are not okay, and etc. How to deal with games? Of course, it's so difficult to see. It's much easier to analyze our own needs and to analyze games that we play with other people. It's not so easy to find out underlying needs for games at other people. But we can start from analyzing ourselves. Which game do we play and why? Which payoffs we want to get? Are we seeking to gain or avoid something? And it's also, Olaf said yesterday, when we were talking about leadership, like you can improve yourself, but you cannot improve other people. But you can improve communication in some way, because if you are aware that you're playing constantly some game with your colleague, maybe you change the way how you answer on his questions, that you don't start playing that game. So in that way, not only to improve yourself, you can avoid those hooks, because when someone is telling you something, the first sentence is usually he's throwing that hook that you like continue that game. So maybe you can answer that in different way so that he cannot hook, and then the game has not started and there will be no game. In which way we can avoid those hook? In most cases, to strengthen our adult state. Usually all games are from parent-child ego states. But if we set some reasonable answer, if we don't continue with that, like his game, he cannot hook and the game cannot start. So first there, I can see some improvements, and what I'm applying in my life at work. When I see that some people are playing those games, I'm also playing. I mean, it's normal, all of us are playing. But to be aware and to be careful what you answer, and when you see that some discussion leads to that, why not, yes, but, or some other game that you can recognize that pattern, then break the game, give some reasonable answer, or just say, oh, I'm not going to continue because there's not going to be any positive effect of that conversation. If we go back to Agile leader role, some new trends, going back to that article that I recommended from the beginning, they analyzed the management styles that were traditional, and in traditional management style, managing for results, and it's called directive style, that you are all the time telling, directing, and controlling. In the new era of Agile leading, it's recommending, instead of to be directive and managing for result, you should focus on designing environments which generates results. So you should not focus on results, you should focus on to create such an environment which will automatically create results. And it's catalyzing. So you can read more about that in that article. I just picked up some most interesting things and that I can relate to transactional analysis. So in catalyzing environment, instead of telling, directing, and managing in a traditional way, you're creating conditions, designing structures, you're introducing practices, introducing roles, introducing vocabularies. And also another thing that Michael Spade and Lisa Atkins recommend, instead of having that predict and plan mindset, you should switch to sense and respond mindset in Agile world. It doesn't mean that you should stop planning, but you should combine those two mindsets and maybe have more of sense and respond and predict and plan. Why did I find that very interesting? If you take a look at that, like directive and catalyzing, and if you go back to that Eric Berg, how he illustrated, you see here that parent part, it's controlling. It's that traditional style that we should avoid. And then another part of our parent ego state, it's nurturing. It's then catalyzing, that we are trying to design some environments and inspire other people. So we should, it's not easy, but to be aware that we have two sides of that parent state and trying maybe to react much more from the nurturing side than from controlling side in order to get catalyzing management and environment instead of have directive. There is another nice framework from the same article. Have you seen that? For organizational windows. When the person is at work, they say you can take a look at that person from 4 different windows. You can have 4 different aspects, internal and external aspect, and then on the individual level and collective level. And those windows are called psychological window, behavioral window, cultural window, and system window. To explain it, what it means. What is a then psychological window? For example, you have one person, developer, who are doing some developing task. He's thinking, so all those activities that he is doing that in order to solve some coding problem, it belongs to that psychological window. It's internal and on individual level. all his skills that he contributes to the company by his coding, it falls up here. All his skills for maybe test-driven development and etc., it's that behavioral window. It's external, but still on individual level. Here, how that person behaves within his team, it's in the company, it's cultural window. So all his behavioral against other people, it's in that internal and collective level. And finally, we have us in the whole big enterprise or in society. So you understand that there are four those windows how you can take a look at the behavior of one person. And here are their recommendations as other Agile leaders or Agile coaches. We should switch roles depending which window we are taking. For example, on that internal and individual level, in the psychological window, the most important is leadership and engagement. So we should behave like coaches and leaders. In this window, we should be much more like process leaders. Here in cultural window, we should be much more like facility leaders to facilitate things through the company. And here on the upper level, like system leaders. When I took a look at that framework for organizational windows, and another thing about coaching and mentoring. Probably you know that, you know what is the difference between mentoring and coaching. Mentor provides the correct answer in order to solve some kind of problem. But coach provides a set of questions to help people to find out answers by themselves. And there are a lot of theory like what is teaching, mentoring and coaching. And usually you start, if you introduce something new, you start with the teaching part. And then the next stage is mentoring, and then the final stage is coaching. I think there is something that can be, where there are the risk with the communication, because when we are talking about mentoring and coaching, it's all the time you should ask questions. And then I see easily that maybe by asking wrong questions, you can end up in playing those games. Like you want to help, but instead of giving a real help, you will end up in playing some game that will result in a negative outcome. So here's one example how from that parent state and the different controlling and nurturing a negative and positive aspect, you can give a help to someone. For example, what is positive? Here is, if you are acting from that controlling part, someone say, oh, I just can't do this essay. And then you answer, I'm sure it might seem difficult, but give it a go. What is negative? If someone asks you for help and you say, oh, you are always complaining, and so on. So you see that there are some like almost similar answers, but in fact they're not so similar because they can result in different games or not. So that's why I think that all that knowledge about the transactional analysis and playing games can be really very useful in order to know how to react, what to answer, especially as like in Agile leading and coaching and mentoring. So as I say, there are a lot of games that people are playing all the time in everyday communication, and it's normal. In fact, I think that also that theory, Eric Berg, who published in 1960, it got some confirmation from the medical side that they are investigating those mirror neurons, that all our neurons are really can mirror and record others' behavior, and that's why we are repeating that, but I don't know too much about that, so I'm just mentioning that it seems that there are some medical explanations why do we really behave like that and playing games. So, what is the next step? My recommendation is, if we already upgraded our operational systems to the next stage to be Agile leaders, go to the App Store, then install all those bad games and install new ones or upgrade your good games, trying to give some positive answers. So do you know what is the difference between invention and innovation? Invention is when you find out something new, invent something new, find something completely new. And innovation is when you take something that already exists and use it in a new way, purposeful way. For example, invention is when they discovered the wheel. But innovation is to use wheel in a car. So, from my perspective, Eric Berne, I think that he deserved the Nobel Prize. He was a great inventor with that transactional analysis. Now you get just a very quick overview of the whole theory, but I really think that it can be really very useful to learn a little bit more about that. It will help you in everyday communication, as it helped me. And here, I'm just trying to be kind of innovator and to use that already existing theory and apply that on Agile coaching and leadership skills. So I hope if there is at least one sentence or one word from today that you are going to take with you out of this room, I'm going to be very happy. So, thank you for your time. So, do you have any questions? I know it's a lot of theoretical things, but I wanted to share that with you because I think when you start thinking about that, you really can notice how people behave. When you start noticing, like, if I say that, oh, usually he answers in that way. And then usually I continue discussion in that way, and so on. So try it at home. Maybe your partners are not going to be so happy. But it's something that I wanted to share with you today, and I found it very useful. Okay, you can come by later on if you get some new questions. And I also have, if you want to take a look at the book, so I have it in my bag, so you can have it later on. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.